The revolution, the Mexican Revolution, is extremely significant, not only for the history of Mexico, but also perhaps of Latin America as well. For many, it's seen as a successful outcome of popular revolutionary upheaval. Others, however, would be a little bit more pessimistic and say that what the revolution translated into was actually the consolidation of a highly authoritarian state. So one needs to balance two aspects about the Mexican Revolution, both the dimension of optimism, how it was a successful transformation of the country, how it led to workers' and peasants' rights, how it led to agrarian reform, with the sense of pessimism about the consolidation of certain elites and also state power, at many times in an authoritarian manner. One of the consequences of the Mexican Revolution, as I highlighted earlier, was agrarian reform. And this translated into collective land rights for many peasants across the country in a form of land known as the ejido. And the ejido was enshrined in the Mexican Constitution of 1917 through Article 27. And that, in many ways, was seen as one of the successful material outcomes of the revolution. That has contemporary significance today because under the restructuring of neoliberalism in the 1990s, in terms of privatization and rollback of the state, the ejido was seen as one of the emblems of neoliberal reform. So in 1992, as part of Mexico's entrance into NAFTA, the particular rights enshrined within the ejido were removed. And that was a prelude to Mexico's entrance into the North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA, in 1994. So you can see that some of the legacies of the Mexican Revolution, particularly in relation to the ejido, are still relevant today in terms of their impact and the reform of those particular rights. My interest in Mexico has stemmed from the fact that many authorities have always talked about the hegemony of the ruling party and the state in Mexico stemming from the revolution. But quite often they would understand hegemony in terms of dominance, in terms of coercive power, in terms of authoritarianism. And I have come to understand a different understanding of hegemony, which I think opens up not only the coercive dimensions of the formation of the Mexican state, but also its ideological, its cultural and its social dimensions as well, and how those factors are as equally as important as the consolidation of state power. So Mexico becomes an extremely important case study, if we want to use that term, on how to look at the coercive and the consensual dynamics of power in forging a country's modernization process, which is what was the outcome of the Mexican Revolution. And I think that's the power really of the argument in my article, that it both tries to capture not only processes of revolution, but also processes of restoration as well. And you can see those contradictions not only in the socio-economic structure, the way in which class society was organized in Mexico, but also in its cultural forms as well. So its artwork, its literature, and its architecture, most prominently, do combine both these ideological aspirations of unity, of solidarity, but also then, underneath that, reveal actually the continuity of certain state classes maintaining power. During the revolution, posters were probably a less significant aspect. One of the famous muralists in Mexico, Diego Rivera, was actually fashioning his skills in the pre-revolutionary period, and that is a fact that is sometimes forgotten. However, really, the posters came into play after the revolutionary moment from 1910 to 20, and this was a revolution within which at least 1 million people died. So the posters became an important ideological facet to construct support for the state that was then still emerging. It was extremely fragile. There were many different contestatory forces in Mexican society. So the state was not a stable social form at that particular moment. So really it was in the 1930s and even into the 40s that the poster became an important conduit to construct consensual support for the Mexican state. And to my right here we have Jesus Escobedo's How to Combat Fascism, which was a poster that came out in 1938 to 1939. So an important geopolitical moment where you have the rise of fascism globally, obviously in Europe, but you have similar forces putting pressure and demands on the state in Mexico as well. The sense that's conveyed, for example, in Jesus Escobedo's poster is one of unity. So you have the revolutionary icon of the worker, you have the revolutionary icon of the peasant, but you also have a military figure and you also have a bourgeois figure as well. And all of these are marching in unity, arm in arm, down the street. And they're almost of a similar height as well. So there is a particular message that is being conveyed there, that through unity, the people can confront challenges facing the state. But of course, there are also exclusions conveyed in the poster as well. There's no female representation, and there's also no indigenous representation either. And it's really a particular image of what the Mexican Revolution became and what it represented that is conveyed through this poster. So they do present certain messages, but also they reveal certain exclusions within Mexican society. And again, those exclusions, particularly in terms of the indigenous question, are present in Mexico still today.